from Timor-Leste, and then next, 3, I think, yeah. So far, I couldn't see, yeah, Mr. Jacinto, I couldn't see the ladies still from the morning. So yeah, I really encourage for the ladies question. Yeah. Okay, ladies, one ladies. Okay. So I think
sorry,
for next time.
I started the first
No,
so much, but for leaders, modern leaders, yes, is human resource part. It is very important part of public administration reform. But they, after they graduated the NIPA, the new managers will start his job, work in public sector, yes? And public sector must be ready to accept it. And we need to amendment it. For example, the government system will be accountable, responsible, open, transparency, and evaluated by. So I mean, we need to closely with preparation the new generation of managers, prepare is work to amendments of public administration reform, define the responsible between central, provincial, and district level, for example, and civil service reform, open system of recruitment process, and evaluation system, evaluated or maybe evaluated by survey of population leaders, because otherwise the system can break the leaders prepared by academy. Because we this same work is working by Academy of Public Administration in Uzbekistan. Yeah. The preparation the new leaders, new managers, but we initiated our project, LGSP project, initiated with some researchers on public administration reform and civil service reform in cooperation with academy for preparing the environment, the new environment where the public sector where will work the new leaders. What do you think about it?
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Second question is Mr. Chas.
Very interesting presentation. My question is, the innovation public administration is one program from government or program yourself from NIPA? Second, who is need to reform public administration? Client or government or institution? Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for question is from Mr. Dilsot from Uzbek and then also from Mr. Jacinto. Okay, maybe for the next session I will open after we receive a response from Mr. Chairman.
About this comment and also question about how we, in the academy should play a role in promoting administrative reform. Well, I think as you explained a lot about the role of the Academy of Administration in Uzbekistan in promoting administrative reform, that basically what other Academy of Administration in other countries do, but the role of the National Academy of Administration, and in our case we call it as NIPA, may difference among countries based on the mandates given by the government. But as mentioned earlier by Pa Anwar, that we in NIPA have three functions. The first one, we have function as policy think tank of the government on administrative reform. So most of the laws and regulations to promote administrative reform is discussed and even drafted in this institution. We are currently investigating about the one of them that's Pak Anwar is leading is to how we really, create the new architecture of the government institution. I mentioned earlier that when we are talking about the government institution in the country, we have 34 ministry, and in addition to it, we have how many, Pak Anwar? Non-ministerial institutions like 28. But then, in addition to them, we have hundreds non-structural organization. Yeah. So, understand that the authority of the government divided into so many institutions. And the other problem is that the way we allocate mandates and function to each institution is not really, in a smart way, in my observation. What I mean is that if, let's say we would like to manage certain government function, let's give the whole business to manage the function to a single institution. That did not happen in the country. So that's why when we are talking about improving our business climate, improving our business practices, we would like to make the government permit for business become simple, become easier, costless. It's very difficult because then the investor, the business committee, then they have to come to so many government offices, even in the local government. So that's why we as NIPA then doing policy research in order to recommend the government, particularly for the next presidency, because we are going to have a general election sooner, April and October for the presidential election. So we would like to do public campaigns to convince the next government that if you would like to make our government become more efficient, let's you say effective, accountable, then this is the architecture of the government institution. That one function, and the second one is to train leaders of the public sector. That's why I share with you the innovation that we make in reforming our training for leadership. And the third one is facilitating, promoting innovation to support the administrative reform. So basically, the scope of work of the National Academy of Administration can be different among countries. But when I heard what you explained to us about the mandate, the function of the National Academy of Administration in Uzbekistan, I think that's really in my opinion, that the role that most of the National Academy of Administration in other countries really do. So that basically, but it can be different among countries. As Nepal, for example, before we have only two functions, policy think tank and educating and training of the leaders. But I don't know what in your case. But in Indonesia, we have, in addition to NIPA, several ministries have their own training and education institution. For example, to mention Ministry of Finance, they have their own training, their own school, to prepare. New recruiting of the Ministry of Finance. But we now trying to convince others that the way we manage that each ministry have their own right to educate high school graduate, then after graduation recruit them as employee. That's not the right way to do. Because I mentioned earlier our concern that there is tendency that employee of ministry to have kind of silo mentality, develop their own narrow perspective. Because if each of the ministry have their own school, their own training center, then it's going to be very difficult for us to build whole government perspective. So I think you should be aware of. If I don't know what happened in Uzbekistan where the ministry,
We have not the special Ministry of Public Administration Reform like as Ministry of Public Administration and Bureaucratic Reform in Indonesia, and really we need it. Responsible could be responsible for this part.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. You better avoid it.
Yes.
Yeah, better avoid it because that's something that we are now struggling. And I already talked with our colleague in the Ministry of Finance that I think we should set together, and to really build what we call as National Academy of Civil Service Academy, and we are on the right direction because we are going to pursue that direction, and some of the government officials already give some green light. Even the office of the Vice President, they agree that we should build what we call a Civil Service Academy, whereby official of all ministry government agencies should be trained using the whole government perspective, not sectorial perspective. So that's I think something that I can respond. And this second one is about the innovation, whether it's really government program or the NIPA. Well, very much depend on the innovation. But in the case of the reforming our leadership training, it's really coming from our initiative. Also, the Reform Leaders Academy, some of the initiative also taken by what we call it as independent team, because when we implementing the bureaucracy reform, we need kind of institution consists of the CSO, civil society organization activists to really work as kind of watchdog, where the way we manage bureaucracy reform already on the track, on the right direction. If not, then they can call us to, well, be careful, stop it, and others. So, but you see, when I come to this office last year, I asked my deputy, one of the deputy that I have, how many, alumni do you have for the second, echelon training? Because you know what, we have for rank of the government, the first one is for the level of Director General, second rank is for the level of Director, and the third one is for the level of the head of the division, and the fourth rank is for the head of the section. So I asked my deputy, how many you already produced for the second rank? How many alumni do you have? 26,000. What? 26,000? And then I asked them, what they do for the country? Why we still have, why still, we're facing a lot of problems in our, governments. Yeah. I don't want to blame, all the garbage to the training. This is a very complex issue, but must be something wrong with our training system. So that's why we come to the conclusion that we should reform our training, leadership training, in order to promote reform leaders. Because I believe that based on our observation, based on the research that we have done, successful story of region, doing best practice, innovation, always have positive association with quality of leadership. So if we can, improve the competency of the leaders in the public sector, we believe that we can promote change in our bureaucracy. One of the effective way of promoting change is nurturing reform leaders. So that way we come to the conclusion that it's time to change. But some of the innovative ideas can be coming from others. So one of the functions of this institution is to document, to investigate innovation and best practices, both domestic and overseas, to see whether innovation and best practices can be replicated in the country. As a result of the implementation of the regional autonomy, we find so many innovations conducted by cities, by district government, by provinces, and we would like also to see whether best practice innovation done by cities, by provinces can be replicated to others. And as I mentioned earlier during my opening remark, that innovation is always, contextual. It's never happened in a vacuum. So that's why one of the functions of this institution is to really learn if innovation, best practice occur in certain region, in certain countries, what the condition to make innovation become successful story that we should know. So if we would like to replicate the success story, innovation, best practice to our region, our government, then we know the condition needed. Because it's not really just like to, to flap our hand. No. This, there are a lot of conditions that we should satisfy in order to have the same successful story. So this is one of the functions. So the ideas can be coming from others, can be coming from the civil society. They have their own, hope, aspiration that then we try to understand, and based on the ideas that they propose to us, we can create innovation. But again, very much depend on. But we as an institution have the right to innovate, and we also that's why when I consulted to the Minister of Home Affairs about 2 or 3 years ago, as chairman of the expert group working to revise laws on decentralization, laws on regional government, we make new chapters. in the law about the regional innovation, because it is, I mean, difficult to make innovation in the public sector, because the public sector always regulated very tightly. So the room for, I mean, making discretion is very small, it's very limited. So sometimes even when we are talking about doing new thing, innovation and others, our auditors, probably they have their own, I mean, narrow and different perspective to understand whether this new thing innovation or or valuation to the law. Yeah. Innovation can be, I mean, valuation, yeah, to the law also. So that way, yeah. So that way we propose to the government, yeah, to get new chapters on our draft of revised law on local government. We call it the chapters, regional innovation. Basically, the chapters give kind of authorization to government employees to exercise their own discretionary power for the public interest. If they can demonstrate that what they do is to satisfy public interest, then they can, I mean, have the right to make discretion, but they have to consult to their boss. They have to document the discretionary, I mean, the discretion that they make. So that basically that we are trying to make. Even now, the Indonesian government is working very hard to issue what we call it as law on administrative discretion, because we would like to promote innovation. Innovation cannot be done without providing discretion to government apparatus. So that's what we are doing now to promote. So yeah. So who should initiate reform? Well, whether the internal government forces or the external forces. In our case, we initiate reform mostly because we would like to respond the external pressure. Because when you see, you are looking at the polling or surveys, yeah, about the public trust, public trust tend to decline. So the government then try to take initiative to reform the bureaucracy. That way, now we have what we call it as grand design of bureaucracy reform. This is the first time the government have a formal document about the reform. Although there are a lot of critique, there are a lot of concern about the quality of the grand design of bureaucracy reform, but at least now we have what we call it a formal document of bureaucracy reform. That's, I think, one of the action taken by the government to respond, public concern and also critique, from external forces that they would like to see that the government become more efficient, more responsive, more accountable. Yeah. So when I mentioned earlier, the globalization era really need the government to reform itself. Otherwise, it's going to make a problem. If the government is not competitive, then how can we expect our, people, our business, entities to be